The message came 3 weeks before the wedding, perfectly timed, carefully worded, and somehow still sharp enough to leave a mark the moment I read it. I was sitting at my desk going through a schedule when my phone lit up, and for a second, I almost smiled, thinking it might be something normal for once, final details, maybe a dress code reminder. Something small that would make me feel like I was actually part of it. Instead, I got one sentence. "I think it's better if you don't come." I read it once, then again, letting the words settle in slowly, not because they were confusing, but because they were too clear. There was no build-up, no soft explanation before it, just a decision already made and delivered like it was reasonable. I typed back one word. "Why?" The response came almost instantly. "It's just, your aesthetic doesn't really match the theme." I stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary, not reacting, not rushing to respond, just letting the meaning expand beyond the words themselves. Because it wasn't really about clothes or colors or how I would look in photos. It was about image. Always image. What does that even mean? I finally asked. A pause. Then another message. I've worked really hard to make everything perfect. The venue, the guest list, the visuals, it all has to look a certain way. Certain way. There it was again. Carefully chosen words that avoided saying the real thing directly. "And I don't fit that?" I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she answered. "You'd stand out." Not in a good way. She didn't say it, but she didn't need to. I leaned back in my chair, phone still in my hand, letting the silence fill the space where a reaction should have been. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It wasn't even the most direct version of it. But this time, it was public, permanent, and intentional. "Okay," I typed back. Just that. No argument. No explanation. No emotion. Because I understood something in that moment that she didn't. She thought she was controlling the image. But she had no idea who actually controlled the frame. The next few days were quiet. No follow-up messages, no attempts to soften what she said, no calls to explain or justify anything. The decision stood exactly as it was sent, final and unquestioned. And I didn't challenge it. I let it sit. I let it become real. Because reacting too early would have made it about me trying to get back in. And I wasn't interested in being included in something that needed to exclude me to work. Instead, I shifted. The $50,000 I had set aside as her wedding gift stayed exactly where it was. But the purpose changed. Completely. The villa next to her venue wasn't hard to find. In fact, it was impossible to miss once I started looking. Larger, cleaner, designed for the same kind of luxury, but without the limitations she had built around herself. It wasn't just close. It was visible. Strategically. Perfectly. I booked it the same week. No hesitation. No negotiation. Because this wasn't about replacing her event. It was about redefining it. Planning didn't take long. When you understand how these things work, when you've spent enough time around people who care about attention, perception, and influence, you don't need months to create something impactful. You need precision. Guest list. Timing. Positioning. I didn't invite everyone. Just the right people. The same names she had been trying to impress. The same ones she mentioned casually in conversations like they mattered more than the event itself. People who didn't just attend events. They defined them. And then there was the announcement. Not loud. Not obvious. Just enough. Private engagement gala. Same date. Same time. Same location. Just next door. By the time everything was set, the picture was clear. 2 events. Side by side. One carefully controlled, designed to look perfect within its own limits. And one that didn't need to limit anything at all. The day arrived exactly the way it always does. With anticipation, movement, and the quiet confidence people carry when they believe everything is going according to plan. I got ready slowly. No rush. No pressure. Because this wasn't about proving something. It was about showing something. When I arrived at the villa, everything was already in place. Lighting, staff, atmosphere, every detail aligned with a level of ease that didn't need to announce itself. It didn't feel forced. It felt natural. And that was the difference. From the terrace, I could see her venue clearly. Guests arriving, cars pulling up, people stepping out dressed exactly the way she wanted them to be. Everything controlled. Everything perfect. At least, from the outside. I checked the time. It was just beginning. And so was I. By the time the first guests settled into her venue, mine had already begun to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, just naturally. Because the people who matter don't rush into rooms. They move where attention moves. And attention had started to drift. At first, it was small. A few delayed arrivals, a few cars that slowed slightly as they passed her entrance before continuing forward. Conversations that started in one place, but didn't stay there. Nothing obvious enough to raise concern, but enough to change the energy in ways that couldn't be ignored if you were paying attention. And I was. From the terrace of the villa, everything was visible. Her guests arriving, staff guiding them inside, the structure of her perfect evening unfolding exactly as planned. But just beyond that, something else was happening. My guests were arriving too. Same level, same influence, but different energy. They didn't step into a controlled setting. They stepped into something that felt effortless, open, fluid, real. And that difference mattered more than anything she had spent months trying to design. Inside my event, conversations started quickly. No forced introductions, no rigid seating, no pressure to perform. People moved freely, naturally gravitating toward what interested them instead of what they were expected to admire. That's the thing about real influence. It doesn't need direction. It builds itself. I didn't stand at the center. I didn't need to. I moved through the space quietly, speaking when it mattered, listening more than I talked, letting the event become what it was meant to be without trying to control it. Because control is most powerful when it isn't obvious. An hour passed, then another. And somewhere in that time, the shift became undeniable. Cars that were supposed to stay left. Guests who were expected to remain didn't. And slowly, almost invisibly, the balance between the two events began to change. From the terrace, I could see it. Empty spaces where there shouldn't have been any. Staff adjusting, trying to maintain something that was starting to slip. Conversations shortening. Energy dropping. Because no matter how perfect something looks, it can't hold people who don't want to stay. My phone buzzed. Her name. I let it ring once. Twice. Then answered. "Where are you?" she asked immediately, her voice tight, controlled, but already carrying something underneath. "Nearby," I replied. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked out across the terrace, watching another car pull into my entrance instead of hers. "Hosting," I said. There was a pause. A real one. Because now, she was starting to understand. "You planned this," she said quietly. I didn't answer directly. "I made a decision," I replied. Her breathing shifted slightly on the other end of the line. "You invited my guests," she said. "I invited people," I corrected. Another pause. Longer this time. "They're leaving," she said, and for the first time, there was no control left in her voice. Just reality. I didn't respond, because there was nothing to add. By sunset, the difference was clear. Not subtle, not arguable. Clear. My event was full, alive, moving. Hers wasn't. And then came the moment she never planned for. The cameras. They didn't arrive because I called them. They arrived because attention leads them. Because when something becomes the center of interest, it draws everything else with it. And at that point, there was only one place left to look. The gates opened, flashes cutting through the soft light of the evening, voices rising just enough to change the atmosphere without breaking it. People turned, not in confusion, but in recognition. Something had shifted. Publicly. Completely. I didn't step forward. I didn't pose. I didn't take control of the moment. Because I already had. And moments like that don't need to be forced. They settle exactly where they belong. My assistant approached quietly, the same way she always did, precise, composed, never disrupting the flow. "Everything is finalized," she said, placing the keys gently into my hand. Penthouse. New. Overlooking everything that had once felt out of reach. I glanced at them briefly, then slipped them into my pocket like they were exactly what they were, expected. Not a surprise. Not a statement. Just the next step. Across the way, I could see movement at her venue. People leaving, some looking back, others not, the kind of quiet exit that says more than any reaction ever could. Because absence is louder than anything else. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to, because the moment had already passed. She wanted a perfect image, a controlled frame, a version of reality where everything fit exactly the way she designed it. And she thought removing me would make it complete. But what she didn't understand was simple. You can't control the image if you don't control where people are looking. And by the time she realized that, everyone was already looking somewhere else. I stayed on the terrace for a moment longer, watching the lights settle into the evening, the energy of the event continuing without interruption, without tension, without anything forced. Because what I built didn't need to exclude anyone to work. It simply existed. Stronger, clearer, unavoidable. And as the last of her guests drifted away, the picture became final. She didn't just lose the moment. She lost the frame.